welcome to another exciting adventure on a special day and time of riding through the unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and this afternoon, I have the blessing and honor to have with me a guest who I had the privilege of talking to and spending some time with at the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference. And she is an amazing light and an amazing soul. And so before I even attempt to give her bio, I just don't feel I could do justice to it. I'm going to turn it over to my amazing, awesome guest, the one, the only, multi-talented Soma ARah Love. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael. I'm really, really delighted to be here and to connect with you. It's an honor, a privilege, and I'm very humbled to be here. And I'm very much looking forward to connecting with you. So thank you for having me.
Yes, and for those of you who may not be aware, Soma actually is in Ireland right now.
Yes, I have very strong Irish roots and heritage, and a very interesting family tree that is very traditionally Irish, although my father was German. But yeah, I have... Ireland is a beautiful, beautiful place that was also part of Atlantis, which was actually... Atlantis wasn't one place, it was the whole of the earth. So it was more of a time period. So, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so those who may not be familiar with all that you do, could you give a brief intro to yourself?
Okay, so I am Soma ARah. I have quite a long backstory that is very much part of who I am today and what I do, and especially with being a channel for the Pleiadians. My experiences began in childhood due to a lot of trauma, and I don't really like to go into the trauma that much these days, although sometimes I do, to give a good solid background or foundation. But I had a lot of trauma, and every time I experienced a trauma, I would have something positive or a spiritual experience because of it. So my childhood was very cathartic. There were two streams that were kind of going on at the same time, on a parallel kind of parallel, meaning that every time something bad would happen, something positive would happen. So it was a great training ground for me, and I would have had a lot of experiences as a child. A huge training ground, which is sometimes hard to get across the extremity of it. But from a very young age, from when I was in the cot, I was having a lot of trauma, but also, positive things were happening. And I was having very real experiences with elementals and nature spirits and fairies and elves and angels and animal spirit guides and my loved ones in spirit, and the Pleiadians as well, and Ashtar. So a lot of my childhood was spent really in a lot of training, and I didn't have... So I had a couple of experiences as a child that really changed me dramatically overnight. I had an experience when I was 8 And then when I was 12, the first experience when I was 8, I had a very large, heavy man laying on top of me. And I left my body. I was a very skinny little thing, underfed, undernourished, and I left my body. And I connected to the Pleiadians. And I was gone for seconds, not even minutes, but seconds. And, well, it seemed like seconds. And I connected to the Pleiadians, although at the time I didn't know who they were. I just knew that I was somewhere else. And then jumping forward to when I was 12, I had experienced a lot more abuse between the ages of 8 and 12. And I got to the point where I just wanted to leave. I didn't want to be alive anymore. I'd had a lot of abuse and trauma and all kinds of things happening from every direction. And that was also how I learned to home in on my psychic abilities, very in the extreme. And so I was laying on my mattress when I was 12 and crying and retching and snotty and just really hysterical, actually, shaking and crying and all of that, and wanting to leave and deciding on taking tablets. And then I had decided that I would do it within the next couple of days, if not that day. And then I left my body and I went up to the corner of the right-hand side of the room. And because of this experience, I'll never forget the layout of the room. It's kind of etched in my mind. But I went up to the right-hand side above the door on the ceiling, and I was looking down on my body. And it was quite a small box room. And I met up with Yeshua, or Jesus, who came to me and took me on a very long journey for about 3 or 4 hours. And when I came back, I knew it was a very real experience because of the dramatic shift in my emotional state. I'd gone from wanting to commit suicide and deciding on doing that within the next couple of days. And when I came back, I was blissful, totally blissful for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then that gradually ebbed away. And I'm cutting the experience short, but there was a lot that happened within that 3 or 4 hours that I was gone. But when I came back, nothing else had changed. Just my experience had shifted my perspective and understanding, and had shifted me into a blissful state of awareness. And yet nothing had changed within my environment at all. I was still in the same primary school. I was still with the same family. I was still with the same bullies at school and dangerous men around me. So nothing else had changed. But that really, really changed my perspective. And after that, I had another experience where I would try, and a couple of times I would try and enter the school system, because we, over in the UK at the time, we started secondary school when we were 12, and I was 12 when I had that experience. So just after that, I would try and go to the school system, and I wasn't allowed to enter. The Pleiadians would always put a vortex of energy around me whenever I tried to enter the school system. The big black gates, I remember standing there for 30, 40 minutes and I just couldn't move. And I was more concerned what people would think that were walking by than anything else. And I didn't really know what was going on at the time. But during a shamanic training that I received for a couple of years, they did explain what that was, and that they were protecting me and stopping me from entering the school system. So after that out-of-body experience, I stayed home and I began to meditate. So I didn't know what it was called. I just knew that it felt really good and I was in a safe space and I wasn't in danger of any type of abuse. And I began to read books by the likes of Edgar Cayce and Barbara Stokes, or Doris Stokes. I forget which one it is now, because there are two of them, but it's the older generation. It's the older woman. And that's what I would do. And I received a lot of transmissions from the Pleiadians as a child, a lot to do with Egypt and the Sphinx. So that's how I spent my childhood, between 12 and 16. And then when I was 16, on my 16th birthday, I left home because it wasn't a good environment. So I was delighted to leave on my 16th birthday, and it was kind of a gift to myself to be away from all of that stuff. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And here I am today.
Well, blessings to you. And one thing that I'm curious if you've thought about is your connection with the Pleiadians. Do you think if that trauma hadn't happened, that connection may not have happened, and that was somehow connected to show you that you are more than what meets the eye?
That's a really interesting, intriguing question. And no one's really asked me that before. But I think the quick answer, or the short answer, is yes. I do think that the trauma helped me to, in some strange or in some kind of horrific way, helped me to keep my link to the Pleiadians. And the link is always there, but it's allowed me, that abuse and trauma allowed me to really connect with them on a deeper level. And my connection goes back several lifetimes, and many previous lifetimes. Jumping ahead, my connection does go back to previous lifetimes, and I was contracted in to be and contracted myself in as well to be a Pleiadian channel and ambassador, if that's the title that people want to use. So I think it's both. I think that the trauma, it definitely, at the age of 8, Michael, it opened that door where I left my body. And sorry, I have a fly here flying around, where I left my body and connected to them. And trauma can be, in hindsight, trauma can be a positive thing. And I know that how that will sound completely off the wall to some people, but and I'm not condoning the trauma or the pedophilia or any of that by any means. What I'm saying is that it is possible to heal and grow from trauma if we can forgive the unforgivable and take the lessons and the good stuff that we can learn from it, because there are good things that we can learn from trauma. We can learn to love ourselves more and understand and know that we don't deserve that. So there are good things that can come from the negative stuff, and we're seeing that on a very grand scale at the moment. And my childhood always reminds me lately that we're experiencing it on a grand scale, where we can learn from the negative aspects that are happening and we're witnessing. So yes, I do think that the trauma had a huge impact on my spiritual development, and without it, I would probably have ended up an addict. with, if I hadn't have experienced the positive aspects and the spiritual aspects that I had. But yeah, I think I was contracted in to experience everything. So, and the out of body experience when I was 12, I was shown that my childhood was perfect and that I was experiencing things that I needed to learn, because in some of my previous lifetimes, like all of us, I would have had, I have experienced everything. And most of us have experienced everything. We're not one or the other. We're a combination of different experiences, both good and bad, both giving and receiving.
Right. And I don't want, I just want to say I don't condone it either, but there is great lessons of learning our abilities from it, and that's the part that I like to focus on, is the positives that came of it, not the aspect itself. So like you, I wanted to make that clear. I was not condoning that behavior. And so with that being said, when you were out of body and experiencing this for the first time at 12, were you like afraid when you stepped out of body and was like, wait, where am I? How am I here? What's this? Or did you just hop out and you're like, okay, here we go. I'm good to go. This all seems natural.
It was a real mixture. I wasn't scared, but I was very surprised and curious, and I wasn't sure where I was. I was surrounded by light, and I went through a tunnel. And then I either went to Jesus or he came to me. I believe he probably came to me. I don't think I went to him. Although my mum was Catholic, kind of loosely Catholic. Well, she was born Catholic, let's say that. And I did have a belief in Jesus before that, somewhat. But I think that I wasn't scared of the experience, but it was beautiful, and I was in kind of I was in the light. There was a lot of light, and they seemed to have a source that came from anywhere. Everything was like light, and it was a bit like being up in the sky or in clouds, although there was no fog. It was just brilliant light. There was a light source from somewhere, and I was in that, and I felt safe. There was a lot of love coming off Jesus and his energy, and I now understand that he was Pleiadian, and that there's a lot that the Bible has been changed several times and written with of course, a lot of us know that the church is very dark and that they are part of the negative agenda. So there's a lot. So because of that, there's a lot in the Bible that is not accurate, and things have been changed and taken out and added. But the Jesus that I met had darker skin and brown hair, and a very beautiful, beautiful man. Embodied the Christ consciousness that he came with. I do believe he was Pleiadian and was a hybrid. I believe his mum was human, probably the Mary that is written about, and that his father was Pleiadian or Pleiadian hybrid. And the other thing that annoys me, or annoys and upsets me about the Bible, and especially the Catholic Church, is that they have purposely put Jesus on a pedestal, where the likes of you and me are unable to access him, and nothing is further from the truth. And I know that, and I am aware of that in my core of my being. I know that because I grew up in a poverty-stricken area in London called Hackney in the 80s. But I always knew that experience was real, and that we are all able to connect in with the likes of Jesus. One of the things that the church does is one of the most evil things that the church has done is to make people believe that they are so small and insignificant that they cannot have an out-of-body experience with Jesus or meet him in a meditation, which is a more simplified version of an out-of-body experience. And we all can. We absolutely all can. So I'll just pause there.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree with you. And one thing I'm thinking in the back of my mind, because in full transparency, we were discussing the Irish culture and the people and their attitudes and everything. Do you think having that heritage and that aspect, when it came to meeting the Pleiadians, put you in a much different space than, say, someone from another part of the world, because the way the culture and the heritage of the land there and the ties to the land, do you think that is another reason why you were drawn to them?
You're asking some really interesting, intriguing, and very intuitive questions. I think there were several aspects that I brought in to this lifetime, or was contracted to bring in, or that came with me. One of them is being Irish. One of them is being half German, which I never really knew my dad. There are some memories of him, but I never really knew him. And also my childhood being very traumatic. I think that I was contracted in to do that. And those two experiences at an early age, and also not having a formal traditional secondary education, because it was the Pleiadians that were teaching me. So I think those those, and maybe I'm missing one or two other things, but I think those things, my whole childhood, especially, those aspects, and being Irish as well, coming from that real traditional Irish background, really built a lot of I definitely chose those aspects to pull in. And also I did choose my childhood, and I did choose my parents, and I did choose all of that would lead me to be part of this great awakening of humanity. But those aspects, yeah, definitely very strong within me. And for a long time, I really believed some of the more old school traditional Irish values in the South, that I have grown out of. I've grown out of a lot of some of those beliefs, somewhat.
So do you feel... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, with your life going forward, with friendships, relationships, and all of that, do you feel the Pleiadians kind of guided you and allowed you to really experience life, or did they like go, no, this isn't for you, yes, this is for you, no, don't do this, kind of guiding and like driving your path, or did you have more freedom, do you think?
Oh, it. Where are your questions coming from? It feels like you've.
Somewhere else.
They have to be, Michael, because you're asking um, really intriguing questions, and I'm a very private person, but I'm delighted that you're asking. It's just that it's almost like you know the questions to ask, so they're definitely coming from somewhere else. But yes, I so when I left home when I was 16, I did from the ages of 16 till about 23-ish. I did the drug scene, and was trying to numb a lot of my pain. And then I had to knock everything on the head because I the whole screen went blank there. But then I had to. So I will get to your question, but I just some background. So between the ages of 16, 17 to about 23, I did the whole drug thing, trying to numb a lot of my pain that I was still in from the trauma and being abused and raped. And I did actually become pregnant as well at the age of 12, 13, after I was raped by my cousin. So at the age of 23, I really cleaned myself up and stopped doing a lot of drugs because I had a very bad fit when I was in the bathroom, and I whacked my chin on a very old solid sink and bit my tongue and really hurt myself. So from the age of 23, I got into spiritualism, and then I moved into Buddhism, and then I moved into the shamanic side of things in 2009, 2011. So I did a lot of shamanic training for a good 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, where I was having a lot of experiences with the Pleiadians, and they showed me my mission, which was quite some experience for me, quite profound experience for me to have been able to see that so clearly. It was during a shamanic journey, and I had a great shamanic teacher in Galway, of all places. And my life, looking back, has been divinely led. I've definitely met the right people at the right time and had the right experiences and training, and the shamanic was a huge part of the sorry, that I've left the window open and the lights on in rural Ireland. It's not a good idea because everything comes in. So I've definitely been divinely led and met some beautiful souls, and I'm in a beautiful relationship most of the time, with a beautiful soul who I've known several times before, and who is an integral part of my learning now and my progression now, because we never stop. A lot of people think just because you're channeling the Pleiadians, whether you're well known or not, or whether you're channeling some other group of alien positive beings, light beings, that everything is perfect for you, and it's not at all. A couple of years ago I was homeless myself, and my determination was so strong with doing the best I could to do my mission. I was sleeping on just off the beach in Dublin and Galway, and I was still channeling the Pleiadians. So just because someone is channeling doesn't mean that their life is a bunch of roses. It's kind of the opposite can be true sometimes. And I know that some other people that are very well known, like Neil Donald Walsh, and Eckhart Tolle have also been homeless, and there's several other people as well that are spiritual teachers that are in the public eye that have been homeless. So yes, my life is divinely led, and very much, and I, as I get older, I step more in on a daily basis, even these days, more into my mission, and yeah.
So, since you mentioned your mission, do you mind sharing with us what your mission is?
My mission is to be a channel for the Pleiadians in a very public way. And if you look at my childhood and my background story, which is one of the reasons I share it so much, is because it was an integral part of what I'm doing, of having a very real relationship with Ashtar and the Pleiadian collective, that is evident in my channeling, and so that is my mission, and it has been hindered a lot by some of the targeting. I have to add that, because if it wasn't for the targeting, I would be a lot further ahead than I actually am. I'll give you a very simple example. So in 2019, 2020, I began to use YouTube heavily to record a lot of the downloads I was getting at the time. And I would have people join my YouTube, and they would join, and then they would disappear or have been unsubscribed within minutes. So someone would come and join, and then they would be unsubscribed. And I knew it wasn't them doing it. I knew that people weren't clicking subscribe and then unsubscribe 2 minutes later. I could understand if 1 or 2 people were doing that, but this was happening in hundreds. So I do get heavily targeted, especially on social medias, and censored hugely. I did an interview once with Sasha Stone where I was interviewing him, and I did another one with him and Brad Olson a couple of years ago. And both of them were, well, the first one with Brad and Sasha was taken down within 4 minutes. So no one saw it because it was up and it was off. It was taken off directly for violating community standards, whatever that is. So I do get heavily targeted. And I was given a space of about 3 or 4 months when I first began to channel the Pleiadians. And I hadn't realized that there was a negative side to things. I was given a grace period for about 3 or 4 months. And at the time, I was seeing the Pleiadians very clearly, like I can see you. And I still do that when I have my eyes closed. And sometimes they work with me in different ways. But back in 2009, I had a grace period for about 3 or 4 months when I first began to channel. And then I was sent an email from a guy who said he worked for NASA, which I had no reason to doubt that he did. But in this, he sent me a message saying, "Hi, I work for NASA, and we should get together and have sex on the astral plane." And of course, I don't have much of a filter. So I typed back what I was thinking. And my response was, "Okay, whatever." And in doing that, I had agreed unknowingly at the time to what he was suggesting. And that evening, he came to me on the astral, and he raped me. And I knew it was real because in the morning I was sore internally, really sore. So, I've been heavily targeted, including as a child. And I have to mention here another experience I had, because back in the day in 2009, I received an email from a guy that I thought was crazy at the time. I didn't know who he was. I didn't even remember who the Pleiadians were. It was in 2009. I didn't remember who the Pleiadians were. It was only after during the shamanic training that I began to have memories of having connected to them as a child. So during this period in 2009, I just left my now ex-husband, and had moved to a very rural area in Ireland, which was beautiful. And it was a minute walk from the beach, a very old rundown house, but beautiful area. And it had a huge window in the living room which overlooked this ocean, and that was why I took it. But it wasn't a luxurious house. It was, the basement was falling down. But anyway, I was sent an email from this guy who I didn't know at all, called Joshua Shapiro. And he emailed me out of the blue and said, "Hi, we should work together. The Pleiadians gave me your name and blah, blah, blah." And of course, he's such an integral part of my story as well. And we're still in touch today. I was going to try and see him in Florida when I was there, but I was just so caught up and busy with the conference that I didn't get to take enough time to go and see him. But I didn't know who he was at the time. And then 2 or 3 days later, maybe between 2 and 4 days after he emailed me, I actually began to channel the Pleiadians, and they turned up behind me, Ashtar directly behind me, and then the rest of them kind of consecutively behind him, kind of in rows, and building up consecutively in numbers. When I was looking at them in my mind's eye, and very solid, very real, very loving. So that's something else I wanted to share with you. I never really got to share that at the conference about Joshua Shapiro, but he's a huge integral part of my story. And also my story is kind of back to front, because although I was very connected and channeling the Pleiadians from the get-go, from when I was in the cot, I didn't remember that until after. So I went from not remembering, to channeling them again, which began around 2009, 2010. And I still hadn't remembered my childhood connection to them, even though I was channeling them via Joshua Shapiro. And then I started to do the shamanic training, and then I began to have memories of having connected to them as a child, and a lot of other memories as well came back from my childhood that I had blocked because of the abuse, because my mind wasn't ready to remember, because the brain is very protective, so it will protect you and block out memories that are horrific, so that's another aspect to my story.
Very interesting. And one thing I kind of finding curious is, so you meet Joshua, you start channeling the Pleiadians, you go into shamanic training, and remember at that point channeling them before. I wonder if there's a reason it unfolded in that pattern, and not just them saying, "Hey, remember us from your childhood," meeting Joshua, doing it, and going. Was there a significance to having to do it in that pattern?
Yeah, there really was, Michael. Um, and because I come from such a real poverty. Like it has been very challenging for me as especially when I was younger. Now I find it easier, but I still find it challenging um, to under to come away from that poverty and lack that was ingrained in me so deeply. You know, some of the dreams I had as a child, it was of it was not of being married or having someone come and whisk me away or living in a beautiful mansion. Some of my dreams as a child, um, I'm starting to get emotional. Sorry. Were of having enough food and going shopping with my mum and being able to buy um, enough food to eat. Those were my dreams. Some of them. Of course, I also had the spiritual ones. But yes, I think that my mission is so strong that I needed to experience everything in the way that I did and the perfect timing that I did. Because if I had not have had those shamanic trainings and journeys that were really profound, I know those were real. I would have, because I came from such a poverty background, I wouldn't have believed it. I tend to do things in the extreme because if I don't get it. Like I don't understand things on a. I need to go to extremes to experience things, which is what I do, and that's how I learn. The best way for me is to do things in the extreme. Um, so that's what I do. And had I done it a little bit, I wouldn't have. It wouldn't be ingrained in me, and I wouldn't have been able to move away. And I'm still doing it, but moving away from that poverty, a lack, low frequency. And David Icke speaks of that. He speaks about it in terms of being the little Michael or the little Soma or the little Dennis, which none of us ever are. So yes, the shamanic journey was huge for me, because it really instilled in me a very deep sense of knowing and understanding what my mission is and my purpose. And there's something else that's coming to me that's also important. It's the past life memories of living on the Pleiadian star system, and that energy is very strong within me. And there was something else that's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite place it yet.
Well, maybe this question might help. I'm not sure if it was before we went live or after live, where we were talking about Atlantis and how your viewpoint of Atlantis, did that viewpoint come from your individual research, or did it come from the Pleiadians that were talking with you?
Can I thank you so much? I love your questions, really love them. Before I answer that, can I go back to I couldn't remember. It was on the tip of my tongue, and it just came to me. What I couldn't remember. Thank you. So when I got that email from Joshua Shapiro, and I began to instantly connect to the Pleiadians. Within like 2 or 4 days, I was there. They were with me, and I was channeling, and very, very strongly. They woke me up one morning, and I went, and I was annoyed because they woke me up at 4 o'clock, and they said, go down to the beach. So of course I did, very, very reluctantly and annoyed, because I'm not a morning person. I like to stay in bed till about maybe 10 a.m. And 4 a.m. they woke me up, and they said, go to the beach. So I did, drag myself down to the beach at 4 a.m. And I could see them clearly, as I can see you. And there were thousands of them, and they were just in front of me, and they had small ships that looked like the ships that I now know that Billy Maya, those type of ships. They were circular and small and big enough to hold 1 or 2 Pleiadian beings. So that was quite some experience. And at the same time, I went through a period that lasted maybe, I would say 4 years. But 4 years. And I had this question in my mind that was just a loop that was going over and round and round and round. And the question was, to myself, who in their right mind is going to believe that I am channeling the Pleiadians? This little poverty-stricken girl from Hackney in London, which is similar to the Bronx back in the 80s. I believe it's changed now, but back then it was pretty horrific, very violent, poverty. Yeah. So that was a question I was asking myself over and over and over again for about 4 years. And then during the shamanic training, I began to read some of the books by other channelers. And I purposely, when I began to channel, I did not want to know, I didn't want to read, I didn't want to listen to any other channeler or people speaking about anything spiritually. I just wanted to get it directly from them. So it took me a while to read, to be comfortable enough within myself to read the likes of Barbara Marciniak, which I read after my shamanic journey. I read Barbara Marciniak, and in her book, she has the exact same question that she was asking herself. Who in their right mind is going to believe that I am channeling the Pleiadians? So that is interesting that she was asking the same question. And the to do with Atlantis is very so I just wanted to share that with you before I moved on to your question about Atlantis.
Yes, thank you for that.
So Atlantis is also seems to be a big part of my mission and information that they want to be shared with the public. I do have a very personal past life or past lives in Atlantis, and they do share a lot of information about Atlantis and how it is. And I was in Atlantis, and I had a lifetime, at least one, where I made mistakes and I made wrong choices and bad decisions. Bearing in mind, it was during the downfall of Atlantis. The downfall of Atlantis occurred because we were invaded by an alien race. That is what happened. And they changed our DNA. They changed humanity's DNA. And the Pleiadians have been consistently showing me for quite some time the parallel timeline that we're on now is directly connected to Atlantis. and also Lemuria. So there's been certain periods in our evolution where we've either evolved or devolved. And at the time of Atlantis, when we were invaded by alien race, a negative alien race, we devolved. And now we're getting to a choice whether to evolve or devolve this time. This is a ascension process where we do get to evolve. We didn't choose that in Atlantis, and I didn't choose that. I chose the wrong path. But this time we get to evolve, and there's a couple of important aspects here. One is that they have instilled within our DNA a certain set of codes within the starseed's DNA that they've yet to give me the information on that, but they are linked to the chakra system. So they have told me that the first one, which is the grounding in the root chakra, they have disclosed or channeled through me the information to do with that root chakra, but they haven't yet really revealed or channeled through me the other ones, the other chakras and the codes that are specific for starseeds. So that's yet to come. But the timeline to do with Atlantis, so they have said, quite surprisingly to me, that they have said that this time they will not, which I found very, very surprising, and I still do. But they have said very strongly that they will us to devolve this time, because the ascension, the great awakening of humanity, is not limited to Earth. It also affects them and everything else within the universe, from the smallest, minutest to the grandest of planets and universes and suns and moons and stars and galaxies and universes. So they have said very strongly that this time they will not allow us to devolve. This time we do get to evolve, because it affects everything within the universe. So that is also linked to Atlantis, because in Atlantis we devolved, and we didn't do that alone. We did that because we were manipulated, led down a certain belief system. We were coerced, we were manipulated, our DNA was changed. So we were kind of led astray, but not, things were hidden from us. There was a lot of information that was hidden from us. We weren't given the full, we didn't read small print, basically. And there were contracts as well that were put into place at that time, which gave the negative, some of the negative alien races permission, a certain time frame, to have ownership of the Earth and humanity. And that contract has now come to an end, has been torn up, is null and void. It no longer is. It's been torn up. It's ended. The contract has ended. And they have said, the Pleiadians and Ashtar have said that they made mistakes. You know, they were not, they were also hoodwinked into not being shown the full picture. So they've had their own evolutionary period as well as other races such as Lyran and Syrians and all of us. They are us from the future. So we are the Pleiadians. A lot of us are. A lot of us don't come from here as starseeds. We either come from the Pleiadians or Lyran or Syrian or some other race, alien race. And one of the reasons I love Greg Braden so much is that it's okay for me to sit here and channel and say this, but it is nice. It's not the word nice is wrong, but it is I think it's okay for me to channel and for other people to channel, but we need to, or some of us need to, and even I do sometimes need to have the science behind it. So that's one of the reasons I love Greg Braden so much, because he brings in the science to prove the spiritual.
That's true, and I'm noticing that we're approaching the hour, and so to be respectful of your time, do you want to share where people can find you if they have questions for you?
Well, it's been so great talking to you. I have to say that because of some of the targeting I've had over the years, it can take me a while sometimes to warm up to people, or not warm up is the wrong word, but to trust people, especially with my background. But so that kind of shows, that comes across in interviews. Sometimes I'll be very, well, but yes, I would love to do more interviews with you. And people can find me on somaarah.love, which is my website. I do a whole lot of things. I channel, I have free weekly groups, and a lot of events, and I do a whole load of stuff. So you can check me out on somaarah.love. The vast majority of my work is on Substack, Soma ARah. And I would like to invite people that would like to come along, that are interested in hearing me channel. I have a free group every Saturday and Sunday, 7 p.m. time, 7 p.m. Irish time, and that's free to join. The link is on my website, somaarah.love.
Very cool. You have books too, do you not?
I do. I have a book called, I have, let me see, 2 books. Is it 2 books? Or is it 3? I even forget now, but 2. One is called The Pleiadian Child by Carol Noonan, which is my birth name. And that was written, I think that took me about 5 years, so I can't remember when that was written, but I began it in 2009 or 2010. So it contains some of the earlier channeling, and it also contains some sections of my childhood as well. But I began it in 2009, and I was still writing it when I was doing the shamanic training. So it does include a lot of my childhood memories and what I channeled as a child. And I'm about to start my 3rd book, I think, or 4th book, because they're very eager to get a lot of the information, because I've had so much information has come through since 2019. 2019 itself was enough to write a whole book on that. So they're very keen for me to start writing again. And my other book is what's really going on, and that's very much about COVID. And that's available as a PDF. It was banned on Amazon, so you won't find it on Amazon because they didn't approve of the information I was sharing. So you can find that on my website as a PDF.
Very cool, and thank you for doing that, and thank you for sharing. And one thing I'd like to do before going to the outro for you is my heart to yours and my show to you. Thank you for your service to humanity.
Oh, I really feel that, Michael. Thank you so much. And I just feel like I want to give you a big hug.
I feel it too. It's like, as I was listening to your story, I was like, I so wish I was there to hug you.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. I just know that we're going to meet up again in person, and I'm just going to give you a big hug when we do.
That would be awesome, and I look forward to having you back on the show, because I feel like we just barely hit the tip of the iceberg, and so I'd love to have you back on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're just amazing. And I really feel that energy. I'm very empathic. I feel energy very strongly. To the point I feel like spirit touching me physically when they're not physical. And I met so many great people at the conference in July, and you're one of them. I know I didn't even get to talk to some of the people that I thought were amazing, and it was just so busy. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to meeting up with you again very soon.
Yes, thank you, and have yourself a wonderful night and a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who's in the chat room and everyone who's watching this. And normally I would say good night because I normally do my shows at night, but I'm going to say instead, good afternoon to everyone, and make it a blessed day. So, bye-bye, everyone.